Chris, Drew DeArmond in for Ryan Fowler. It's a great to speak with you this afternoon. How are you, sir?
Drew, it's great to speak with you, and good of you to step in for Ryan. We send our prayers and wishes with him. And great to be with you. It's an honor to be with you, and it's always great to talk football with the great folks in Tuscaloosa.
Yes, sir. And what are your thoughts on this matchup? Our predictions contest has been extremely one-sided. There's a lot of people that don't believe A&M can trade punches with Alabama. I think they can give Alabama at least a three-quarter battle. We had Billy Lucci on Texags Radio and Texags.com to start the show. He believes that A&M is one of the top 3 or 4 teams that will play Alabama this year. You've seen them. You saw them against Clemson, which is considered a top 5 team with Dabo Swinney. I mean, what are your thoughts on the matchup initially, Alabama and Texas A&M inside Bryant-Denny on Saturday?
Well, it'll be a little different style than, let's say, what Alabama faced last week. A&M is going to be a little more physical. That's their style and what Jimbo wants to do. They're going to try to run the football now as the game kind of gets where it's more than a 2-3 possession game and they have to abandon the run a little bit. That's going to make it tougher for them. But as long as they can run the football and play with some balance, that's what they're going to try to do. They're going to try to move the quarterback. So, while you can get good pressure, and Alabama did a great job with 4-man pressures, blitzed only a handful of times, you're not dealing with just a pocket guy. So they're going to try to move the pocket to alleviate some of the pressure and try to make Alabama defend the quarterback, his feet. So it'll be a little different. Defensively, they're better than Ole Miss. I wouldn't say that they're really good, but they've got some people up front that can play and give more of an issue for the protections of Alabama than Ole Miss ever could. But I don't see this being I think we're at the point now, and listen, as somebody that watches the game, I like to see good games and whatnot. I could sit. I don't know that I can sit here and make a case that this is going to be a really good game. I think it'll be a decisive win. I don't know if it's going to go as deep into the third quarter and be competitive, but I could see, like, for example, and it really depends upon your definition, but could I see it being just maybe a 2-possession game in the third quarter? Possibly, I think that is within reason, but I think it's just as likely that Alabama is going to wear them out. In other words, I don't see this being like Ole Miss scores real quickly and Alabama just blows Ole Miss away. I think it's going to be a little bit more methodical and maybe a little bit more challenging, which is going to be a little different, I think, and good for Alabama to see a different style. But I don't think Ole Miss A&M is ready to be able to hang 4 quarters, and I don't know even after a half how close it'll be.
And Chris, am I right to think that so far, I know Alabama has not been challenged, and the schedule has not been what we've seen LSU face. But to me, this defense looks like it's ahead of schedule, especially the secondary that held up even better than I thought they would against a very talented group of receivers from Ole Miss. But I really think so far, I thought the story of the Ole Miss win was the defense, because I thought offensively with how bad Ole Miss is on D that they would not be able to hold Alabama under half 100. But I was really surprised at how well the secondary held up. What were your thoughts?
Drew, I think you hit it on the nail on the head. I thought the defense answered a lot of questions, and they're young, but those are some explosive receivers, and they did a tremendous job. I mean, they had a bad play on one play. They made a personnel move, and they put Patrick Surtain in. And not only did they play well for 4 quarters, but they played a whole lot of people. So they got a lot of guys experienced on the defense, and as I mentioned, they played coverage the entire game. So I mean, they didn't have to blitz. They didn't blitz. They got good base pressure, good coverage, and I just thought that they played on all 3 levels of very, very good defensive game. Breaking down the tape, when you watch the game, when I watch a game, I've got to watch a lot of games at one time, and I make notes, and then I go back and watch the game singularly, and then I go back and watch the coaching tape of it. And the more I watched it and studied it, the more impressed I was with the defensive end. far superior to anybody that they're going to play on their schedule. And I don't want to look ahead or anything, but the bottom line is, I think Mississippi State can cause some challenges with their defensive front. But this team is just really on a different level. I mean, only Georgia is on their level. I think that Ohio State and Clemson are good, a little bit of a drop off, but they're on their level personnel wise. But in the SEC, only Georgia can really match up, and I just don't see A&M being that type of team. But it's the only variable, Drew, is are they're gonna play their best game? Or are they gonna have a game where they're just not real sharp? And we know that's probably, of all the things that Nick Saban does, that's what he does best. Keeps them to play closest to their optimal level. And if they do that, it's going to be curtains. The only variable is you play a bad game. And that tends to be what Ohio State and Clemson will do from time to time. It's just not what Alabama does. And quite frankly, it's not what Georgia's doing. And until I see it, otherwise, that's the way it's shown up for me on tape week in and week out.
And this is Chris Landry of LandryFootball.com, always each week live on the game on Tide 102.9 in Tuscaloosa. I'm Drew DeArmond in for Ryan Fowler. And Chris, with Kellen Mond and with the way we've seen him develop, he got insanely hot in the second half in Aggieland in College Station against Clemson. How do you see him kind of matching up? They do have some receivers that are dangerous, led by Jamon Osborne. I don't think they're on the Ole Miss level, though. Your thoughts on how they match up with what we've seen out of this Alabama secondary?
Well, I think the difference is, again, it's not a pure drop back. I mean, what they're doing with them, they run some drop back, they move the pocket. So what it is, it's a little bit different on how you have to defend them schematically. I think that Jimbo's done a really good job with Kellen Mond. I think the thing that is most impressive about him is that he's a really gutsy kid that's a winner, that plays with a lot of confidence, and he doesn't let bad plays phase him, and guys believe in him. So, again, I think they're going to try to run the football, and certainly if Alabama can defend the run with 7, it's going to be very difficult for A&M to throw the football. Alabama has to creep an extra guy in, and that's what they want to do. But they're going to try to pull the ball down, again, roll him out a little bit, give him some run-pass options, and try to attack him that way. So I actually think that A&M, just by their design and what they can do, the versatility, they have a chance to have more success. I expect them to score more than 7 points, in other words. Not a lot, but more than 7, because I think it's not going to be a drop-back, offense for 4 quarters that they're going to face. They're going to move the pocket a little bit, and it's going to be a little bit more challenging, again, for Alabama's defense, which, again, I think it's good because it'll give them an opportunity to see a quarterback that's got some dual-threat capabilities.
Before we go to the other side of the football, and Alabama's just unbelievable efficiency offensively, just you break the film down and you watch it each week. And I watch during, whether it be from a press box or from my television. It seems to me that one concern with Alabama is they have not been lights out against the run. They've been good, but Mack Wilson has kind of struggled with his run fits to me, watching film. He seems to be getting caught up in the wash. He's always been good against the pass, but now, much like Reggie Ragland and Reuben Foster, he's had to develop as a 3-down linebacker, except I think in the other 2 cases, Reggie Ragland and, of course, Reuben Foster, they had to get better in coverage. They were always good against the run. Am I wrong to be thinking, though, that Mack Wilson's got to improve? Because Alabama's starting with A&M on Saturday, LSU, Auburn, they're going to face some teams that are going to try to challenge them between the tackles.
I think it's fair. I think that Mack is a little different player from a build and a style standpoint than those other guys that you mentioned. But I do think he does have room for improvement. Look, I think all of those guys have room for improvement. I don't think they played their best ball on defense. I think that's part of the youth. I think there's a lot that Mack is asked to do in that position. A lot of calls, a lot of adjustments, and I think that there is a learning curve with that. and I would expect him to get a little bit better incrementally. But there's no doubt about it. And the reason is he's got to attack it right, because he's not as good at, fighting through blocks, fighting through trash, as we like to call it. He's a little bit more of an avoid guy. So as he avoids, sometimes he gets in and he makes a big play. Other times he is a little bit out of position. That's just more of a byproduct of the style of player he is. But, yeah, no, I think they can improve. I don't see a great running game out of LSU right now. Auburn always gets better with the run as the season goes along. But there are going to be some challenges, you're right. I mean, Mississippi State can run it, and that tongue back is really good. So, yeah, there's no question they've got room for improvement.
Then offensively for Alabama, the ones have been lights out. Tua Tagovailoa has certainly lived up to the billing. His first road start, he did not miss a beat. He's been tremendously efficient. The accuracy has been everything that Alabama fans could have hoped with what they saw in the second half against Georgia. We saw them the offensive line make some strides against Ole Miss, though that's hard to talk about because Ole Miss is so bad defensively. But Chris, over these 3 games, what have you seen from this Alabama offense as they continue to evolve and grow with Tua behind center? Only, as we've said, only 3 starts into his career.
Well, it's been phenomenal. Obviously, let's start with the offensive line. I do think that they're going to get challenged a little more this week and going forward. Mississippi State, LSU, Auburn, all those defensive fronts are going to be tougher to block than Ole Miss. I agree with you there. But they're big, they're physical, and they're going to be able to run the football. And particularly since they can throw the football so well now, what are you going to do to defend Alabama now? You're going to have to put an 8th guy in the box, because if you don't, Alabama will run the football and block you. And if you do that, then now you've got something that was not seen with the same level of consistency, and that is a passing game that can eat you up. So it's a pick-your-poison situation. It's, again, going to get tougher for them, but what I see with an offense is a lot of good receivers, really good tight ends, 3 running backs that are big time would be, 1,000-yard plus running backs that if they just were singularly put in there, but because they're rotated, they're always fresh, and that's where the run, even when it is not as successful early, by the 4th quarter when they're trying to just bleed the clock and put the game away, those guys just pounding and pounding, and all of a sudden there's a big run and another and another. So I see an offense that's going to be very difficult for any to defend. And the only teams that are going to really have a chance to be successful are the teams that can defend that run with 7 or maybe 6, and that's just going to be tough to do. But 7, and then obviously play too deep man under, and do a really good job of compressing those throwing lanes so that makes it difficult. Then there are not many of those people that can do that, and none of them are on the schedule that can do all of that, and then still be able to score enough on Alabama's defense. That's where the difficulty is. I mean, I think that as we kind of look in, and I know we're focusing this week on A&M, but as I look forward to this, I'm thinking, okay, yeah, you've got a really good defense in Mississippi, really good defensive front in Mississippi State, a good front and an even better secondary in LSU, a great front, not as great as secondary for Auburn. They all present individual problems, but then offensively, those teams being able to score enough against Alabama to keep up with what the offense can do, that's tough, and that's where it's going to take a special performance that's probably going to be later in the season towards the playoffs for somebody to really have a chance. I think that their balance on offense is going to make it difficult for people to try to, again, pick their poison of what they're going to want to take away.
How much better is this A&M defense early under Mike Elko than what we've seen in the past? Because Kevin Sumlin, that was really his bugaboo. They could never figure it out.
Well, they're better technique-wise. They do a better job with their run fits. They do a better job of understanding their landmarks and coverage. They're fundamentally better, more disciplined. But here's the other thing: is to this point, they play better complementary football, meaning they run the football. Under Kevin Sumlin, their defense was on the field all the time. You know, their tempo, and they said, well, you play that many snaps on defense, you're not going to be good. Jimbo is trying to build it. Hey, we're going to run the football. We're going to be physical. And, you know, that one of the things I didn't address is that I think is going to be important here is they're going to have to defend the tight end. That's a big part of what A&M wants to do. So that's going to be the key for the linebackers and the safeties to be able to handle that. But they like to be able to employ all of that to where they can play a little bit more game control offensively so that their defense can be on the field less snaps and then be on the field and with longer intervals between snaps. That keeps them fresher and playing a little bit better. That's the real key to I think playing complementary football that Jimbo is going to get. And I think the future, what I think is interesting, and Drew, I'm sure you've talked about it, and I'm sure the listeners have, is there's going to be a natural comparison because A&M played Clemson so well that I think people are going to be watching. Now, I know that game was in College Station. This one's going to be in Tuscaloosa. That's a difference, but there are going to be a lot of comparisons. I think what you're going to see is the difficulty of playing a team that's more disciplined, Alabama is, compared to Clemson on a down-in, down-out basis. So where A&M is going to be challenged is can they run the football well enough, have enough balance to keep their defense fresh so that they can find a way to slow down this Alabama offense. That's going to be a bigger challenge, whereas I thought Clemson really kind of missed the mark, missed a few opportunities on offense, so A&M was able to get off the field. And then I thought defensively, with all the talent that Clemson has, they made defensive line play great against A&M, Clemson's defensive line. But they didn't really play as well on the second, third level, and A&M was able to make some plays. We'll see if A&M is going to be able to do that on the road here against Alabama.
And then I know you're very familiar with his next guy that he played it. He was a great player at LSU, was maybe the number one running back in the country when he came out. And then he went on to have one of the most underrated pro careers ever because of his versatility and the way he was a Swiss Army knife for Bill Belichick, and that's Kevin Falk. I really think that's what Josh Jacobs is turning into on the college level. Your thoughts?
Well, as I mentioned, they've got, three great backs, and he's one of them. I mean, I think he's got a lot of ability that, if you're just looking at him, if he were at a place, he could be the feature back, and he could have that type of a career that has the ability to catch it, run it, speed, balance, underrated power. He's got the whole package. And the fact that he can be a factor with two other big-time guys that are a little bit different in their styles, that's what makes them in Georgia, that's what separates, in terms of backs. I mean, they can throw any one of 3-4 guys out there, and they just could line up and be dominant. I think he's an outstanding player, and I think he's going to have a really good career, and he's off to a good start.
He's finally healthy, and I think everyone is seeing the kind of explosiveness he can play with and his ability to catch the football, be a security blanket for Tua Tagovailoa. And then I know you mentioned it. I don't think he's as explosive as O.J. Howard, but talk about the threat that Irv Smith has turned into early in this season.
Well, Irv is the guy that they look to in the passing game to try to create mismatches, to create opportunities down the seam. It gives another option in the passing game. And, it is different because when O.J. was there, the quarterback situation, and therefore the play calling was a little different. They schemed plays for O.J. to get open, whereas now you've got even better depth at receiver, but you've got the ability to get your secondary and tertiary options in your reads, the ball a little bit more, and that's where I think Irv can become a big factor. There's some mismatch opportunities, particularly on third down in the red zone, where he can be a real big factor.
And do we see Tua Tagovailoa for 3+ quarters in this game? I was a little surprised, Chris, by the point spread in this. 27 points. We know what Alabama's done the first 3 weeks, but do you see Alabama covering this number? What is your feel for the matchup overall?
Numbers probably pretty good, probably pretty accurate. I'd kind of say it's probably in that 24-30 range. I do. It's right in that range. In terms of Tua, listen, the flow of the game and where they are on, they've been able to put everybody away. So I think if they're able to do that again, they've got. Here's what I can tell you what firsthand from what Nick's plan is. They've got a plan for Jalen every game, because they've got to have one if Tua goes down and gets injured, and they plan to play Jalen, but I don't know that they break the flow. I know they're not going to break the flow and the momentum of the game, and if it's a tight game, no, I don't know that Jalen gets in. When he gets in. At this point, it's been earlier. If this game is a little bit closer, then maybe Tua plays a little longer. But that's going to depend upon how he plays, how they're defending him, how well they're controlling the game at the line of scrimmage. And if they continue to do it, and if the game goes the way I think, then it's probably into the third quarter where we see Jalen. Maybe we see him and as a change of pace in the first half. I don't know. But that's going to depend a lot situationally on down and distance, field position, and, again, the flow of the game. The one thing that it does besides giving preparing for the event of Tua getting injured, here's the one thing I can tell you that it does defensively. When you have another quarterback, whether it's Jalen or whether it's Justin Fields at Georgia, whatever the case may be, defensively, you have to take a certain amount of practice time every week to try to game plan how are you going to defend Jalen Hurts if he's in the game. And it's not as simple as people think, well, Jalen comes in the game, he's more of a runner. Yeah, but you got to practice against that. And if you do that, it takes time away in a 20-hour week. So just having the threat of doing some things with the RPOs and with the run game, first of all, you got to do that with Tua, but they're less design runs with Tua. It's more of play extensions with Tua and some run designs. With Jalen, there's a lot more run design and much more, obviously, one read and run type situations that you've got to prepare for. So I think it does create difficulties. I know because I've talked to the NM coaches this week and coaches that play against them, that they've got to prepare for that. And they know that a team can win with Jalen Hurts as well, but they definitely fear Tua more because of what he brings in terms of the run and pass threat that is, quite frankly, very, very unique and I think unparalleled right now.
Well, and the unparalleled, of course, is LandryFootball.com. Chris, let everybody know about your outstanding service and website. We always appreciate you joining us at 4 o'clock each Wednesday. And I know you guys have a special going on, especially for those folks, to help those folks out in South Carolina and North Carolina with Hurricane Florence kind of devastating that region.
Yeah, we did this. We've done this in the past. We've done it, of course, when the tornadoes hit in the local area there. And then, of course, in Houston last year, we had some floods in Baton Rouge. A couple of years ago, and it's maybe it's not as much as we'd like to do, but we're going to do everything we can. So, any memberships that come aboard, we're going to give 50% to the victims of the flood and Hurricane Florence. For the folks that are suffering in Carolina, they definitely need our prayers and help any way we can get them, and we're going to do everything we can. And as far as LandryFootball.com. Just every week with Ryan. Look, we're a little different. My background is as a coach and as a scout, and I still do work for college programs and NFL teams. And when we started the website, we wanted to provide some of that information to the fans, something that's easy to read, a lot of information to absorb, but easy to sort through. So if you're an Alabama fan, you can go click on Alabama or Auburn or Tennessee or Georgia or whatever, and find out about the teams and find out more about the game from inside the film room, from a coaching and scouting viewpoint. So that's what we do for you. It's one-stop shopping football. It's very, very affordable. It's less than a magazine subscription, and you have access to your own scouting and coaching department. So that's what we're all about. If you like football, you'll love LandryFootball.com. And check us out. You can follow me on Twitter at LandryFootball. We try to keep you up to date on everything that's going on around the college game, the NFL game, and take you inside the film room.